morning is going to be a little bit different. And I don't know always how to deal with things the way we ought. So I'm just going to say it, and you're just going to have to deal with it. When you think of Solomon, what is it that you think? What do you think about? Come on, give me some answers. Wisest man. Is that the first thing we think about, or is it why did he marry all these women? So we got the wisest man who did this. That's an interesting observation. Solomon, who was given wisdom by God, didn't always use that wisdom correctly. But he recorded things that were wisdom, didn't he? What did the world of his day think of his wisdom? Well, they came from all over the world to hear him. We tell the story of Queen of Sheba who came, and when she heard what he had to say, when she asked him a question, she said, they ain't even told half of it yet. I mean, all that's been told us around the world, the half of it hadn't been told. But just because a person is wise, doesn't mean they always do wise things. So where would we go to learn wisdom from Solomon? Where would we go in the Bible to learn wisdom from Solomon? Proverbs. We'd go to the book of Proverbs. Now we love to do that, don't we? We read Proverbs all the time. Well, I'm kind of being sarcastic about that. But people who talk self-help, people who are religious and talk self-help, say you ought to read a chapter of Proverbs every day. And if you did, you'd read through the book of Proverbs about once a month. And I think they're right. I think we ought to have to think about what's wise and what's not wise. Because wise people don't always make wise decisions. And making wise decisions understand that Ecclesiastes is an inspired book about an uninspired life. God created us to be like Him. And He wants us to be smart people, wise people, intelligent people. And understand what wisdom really is. Well, having said that, notice, to know wisdom and instruction is one. To discern things of understanding is the parallel. Hebrew parallelism. That's what it is. To receive instruction and wise behavior is the first one. Righteousness, justice, and equity should be understood as that second parallelism, which is what wise behavior is. Well, wise behavior is righteousness and justice and equity. To give prudence to the naive, that's one. To give youth knowledge and discretion, that's two. Those are parallel things. So, guess who the naive are? The youth. A wise man will hear and increase learning. That's one. A man of understanding will acquire wise counsel. That's the parallel. So, why should this matter? Well, what's Solomon trying to do when he writes all these proverbs, all these wise sayings? That's what they are. These are wise sayings. Well, I'm writing these things to you so that you can understand the proverb and the figure, which lets you know that proverbs are pictures, figures of speech. The words of the wise and their riddles. Isn't that interesting? Wisdom and riddles. So the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. That's the first one. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. That's the parallel. But those are the two opposites, huh? And those are the two contexts. Well, having said that, in this 7 verses, there are 3 things I want you to see, and I'm going to go very fast, so maybe we'll get through faster this morning. But notice that, first of all, he defines wise behavior. Wise behavior is, of course, that righteousness and justice and equity. That's what he said, okay? That's where we are. So, righteousness is the first word. Now, righteousness here, word study, comes from Strong's Concordance, the Hebrew dictionary, which means justice, rightness, righteousness. So it's not imputed righteousness that he's talking about. The Old Testament very seldom talks about imputed righteousness. It only talks about imputed righteousness prophetically. But when the Jews thought about righteousness, they thought about them being right. And by the way, that's what they were supposed to be. But you know, that's what you and I are supposed to be, or were supposed to be, even before we became Christians. And isn't it interesting how in our world, people define how you ought to treat me? You need to treat me right. But you need to treat me right according to what I believe is right, not necessarily what you believe is right. The Hebrew Chaldean lexicon says, in a physical sense, it means straightness. By the way, so what are you supposed to walk? Walk the straight and narrow, huh? That's kind of the idea. Straightness, rightness. Hence, in an ethical sense, what is right? Wise living is doing the right thing. Unwise living is doing the wrong thing. That would be the concept. Second word is justice. And justice has to do with judgment, ordinance, law. It has to do with, for lack of a better way to say it, keeping the law. But I'm not talking about keeping the law of Moses, though. That's important. Don't misunderstand me. I'm keeping law. So when you drive down the freeway, it's wise to do what? Drive the speed limit. Why is it wise to drive the speed limit? Yeah, so you won't get a ticket. It's wise to do that because if you don't do that, you may suffer the consequences. And you know, it's amazing how many people don't do that and don't suffer the consequences. Therefore, what happens to life? What happens to wisdom? It goes out the window. The Hebrew Calvin Dictionary says that which is just or lawful or according to law. That's what I just talked about. So wise behavior is doing what is lawful. Well, that's interesting. Do you know that when Jesus asked the Jews, or the law, you come to ask Jesus what's the greatest commandment in the law, what is it? And what was the second one? And where do you find how to do that? In the Ten Commandments. So Paul was saying, Romans 13, love does no wrong to a neighbor. Which means what? Love always does what's right to a neighbor. Love always does what's lawful to a neighbor. And then equity. That's an interesting word, equity. It's just that's the New American Standard word. You might need to look at your translation. The Strong's again says that it is even. It's upright. It's straight. It's equity. We would say it's what's fair in our modern language. You need to be fair with people. You remember when you were growing up and you know you're playing the game, you know, and somebody breaks the rules of the game, and what's the first thing you say? That's not fair. That's kind of the idea. Wise behavior is doing what is equitable or fair. So wise living, folks, is doing what's right. It is doing what's lawful. It is doing what's fair. That's the three words. Now, notice then the contrast between the two kinds of people. First one, of course, is the youth, who he says are naive. Now that's an interesting observation when you stop and think about it, because young people think they know it all. And young people think they ought to get it all. And isn't it amazing how, in our religious world, you see, we want young preachers who have a lot of enthusiasm. Now those preachers who have some experience with wisdom. I'll talk about experience with wisdom in a minute. But first of all, notice he says young people need some prudence. They need to understand what it means to be prudent. And the word is prudence. That's interesting. And it's used in the New Testament only 4 or 5 times, or in the Old Testament only 4 or 5 times, and 2 times it's used to talk about scheme and craftiness. So being shrewd to accomplish evil, and then the other times it's talking about being shrewd to accomplish good. And it's interesting because they translate it on the one side craftiness, and on the other side they translate it prudence. It's like we've got 2 different words. Translation. So by the way, that's why I tell you when you're studying your Bible, when you're studying, not just when you're reading, when you're studying, look at 2 or 3 translations and see how the words are used. If something comes up that you need to think about, you know, look at 3 or 4 English translations and look at the different words they use and understand that those words are synonyms, you see. That means Boy, he can tell you the history of the wars, the Germans and the Nazis and the Italians he can tell you the history of the wars. He can tell you facts about things that you didn't even want to know facts about. And I was sitting there talking with Sherry the other day on the phone, and we were talking about me needing to do my exercise, you know. And I told her, I'm going to start playing a little golf, and but I'm going to start trying to walk more. And so I was asking her, you know, I said, how many feet are in a mile? 5,280. I told him 5,280. So how many yards are in a mile? You know, just got to divide that by 3. And she said, I don't know, ask my Karen. She could probably tell you those facts, you know. Well, but what are you going to do with those facts? How are we going to apply that to life? You know, how will I apply that to life, you know? Yards of feet and walking and all that kind of stuff. Well, that's the idea, folks. Perception about how to go about using the facts that you have. And then he says they need discretion. And Strong's again says that purpose, or device, or plot. I want you to notice how similar sometimes these words get. The young are the naive. They think they know more than they do. They think they know how to do better than mom and dad did. They need knowledge and prudence and purpose. Do you know that even the atheist will tell you that you ought to be honest and upright and prudent and have purpose? You ought not to do other people wrong. You know, when they say stuff like that, I'm talking about wise people. You know how they say stuff like that? Because they understand that we're supposed to live with each other. And if we do what's right, with right purpose, with right desires, we'll get along. Well, there's methods of my madness. Y'all hang with me. They think they know, but they're too naive to really know what's right. But lastly, it defines the response of the wise. Wise people, people who have wisdom, will listen. They'll hear what's being said. They'll hear what's going on. And that word here means to listen to hear, to understand, with a view to apply it to life, to obey. It's not just hearing noise, but it's hearing the truth. It's hearing the wisdom of what's being said. It's dealing with that. And so they want to hear more, not less. Wise people want to listen. Naive people want to talk. Let me tell you how to carry the cabbage. Wise people will increase in learning. They'll learn more, not less. Now remember, we're not talking about learning facts. We're talking about life. And so as you read through the book of Proverbs, he's going to give you these short, pithy, little one-verse, sometimes two-verse riddles, saying about wise choices and wise living. Wise people shun So, naive, will they seek counsel and seek good advice? Wise people will seek counsel and good advice. Well, that's just the introduction to the book, y'all. That's all it is. Wise people will always be hearing, always be learning, always be seeking good advice. Now, in the first place, notice that he ends that whole saying by saying, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. Understand again that's Hebrew parallelism. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. That's the one parallel. That's the one thing. And fools despise wisdom and instruction, which is the second way or another way of saying fools despise knowledge. Because they think they know it already. They think there's no more to learn. They think there's no more to expanding life. Solomon was a wise man. Wrote a lot of proverbs. Read 1 Kings and 1 Kings chapter 4. And you get down there and he'll tell you how many proverbs did Solomon write? Well, we don't have them all in the book of Proverbs. We don't have all of them. He wrote a whole lot more than were recorded. And of course, when you read the book of Proverbs, you'll find out that all the book of Proverbs are not Proverbs of Solomon himself, but there are some Proverbs of other people in there as well. Wise people. But when you read about Solomon's life, read 1 Kings, start in chapter 1 and go to chapter, oh, it was 11, I guess. You know, 12 is when the divided kingdom happens. So that'll get to the big part of Solomon's life. But let me tell you what to go do. Read that little 12th chapter book of Ecclesiastes. Because Solomon said he tried everything in life. Kind of like people do today. He tried getting all God created you in His image. And He created you to be wise. And the beginning of wisdom is the fear of the Lord. Reverencing God and knowing that God is the one who is right always. So when you read the book of Proverbs, I'm going to end with this. We're done. When you read the book of Proverbs and you read those little one-verse Proverbs, two-verse Proverbs, it talks about making wise decisions in life. Note that the book of Proverbs was not written to Christians. I think it was preserved for the Jews, but I'm not sure it was just written to the Jews. I think it was a wise king writing to his kingdom. And all those people all over the world heard the wisdom of Solomon and came from far and wide. And when it was all said and done by Solomon, he said, "Fear God and keep His commandments. This is the whole of man." That's who you're supposed to be. Not naive and foolish, but wise and understanding. Now, when you come to the New Testament, you're going to hear Paul say several times, Messiah, Christ, is the wisdom of God. There's the wisdom of God. Now, that's another statement that's full of meaning. But a wise man will pursue faith in God through Jesus Christ. And if you've not come to God through Christ,